Welcome to the 2018 NHL Draft in Dallas. This is the panel presented by SportCheck, and that is a wrap on day one, round one of the draft. Edmonton taking away Evan Bouchard, big, strong, right-handed D-man. Bob, Jack, is that just what Edmonton needs?
Well, it's just what Edmonton needs, and I don't think it was what many people thought Edmonton was going to get in the draft. I mean, I think the Oilers, we talked about it before, Jack, when we did our mock drafts, that they'd be blocking slap shots in the nude to have a player like this fall into their lap, and that's what occurred here. And as it turned out, there was actually three really good players in that spot that I think that the Oilers felt maybe wouldn't be there at number 10. So ultimately, the Oilers get a guy that's played 3 years of junior hockey. He can really process the game. They've had a lot of viewings on him from his days in London. He can absolutely hammer the pill, and he can make a pass as well. So I think it's a pretty exciting day in Oil Country.
It's also indicative of what you prepare for at the draft. On the panel yesterday, Peter Chiarelli talked about the need to develop different scenarios and practice for what might happen so that you're ready on the floor when it does happen. They were ready for a scenario whereby a guy like Oliver Wahlstrom with a lethal shot, a goal scorer type of guy was there. And they knew they were going to take Evan Bouchard if they had the choice of two. So they take Bouchard, and just to give you some idea of the kind of year Evan Bouchard had, just 4 years ago, the number one pick in the draft was Aaron Ekblad. Like Bouchard, he played in the Ontario Hockey League. He had 53 points in his draft year. Bouchard had 87. Ekblad went 1. Oilers get Bouchard at 10.
Let's just touch on your earlier point a little bit more here. How do you think the draft unfolded? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm shocked. I'll tell you. And Peter Chiarelli, I think, mentioned in that interview yesterday, Jack, that they were looking at maybe 10 or 11 different mocks. I'm not convinced, and I'd be interested to see if we could get an actual answer to this. I don't think that in any of those mock drafts they would have envisioned Evan Bouchard, Noah Dobson, as well as the talented American Oliver Wahlstrom, a right shot forward that can absolutely, has got elite level finish. I don't think in any of those mock drafts they envisioned those three guys being there. I was told this morning, we talked about this on Oilers Now today, that we had heard that Barrett Heighton, a guy that we figured would be there maybe at 10, that he was rising in a hurry. But I didn't see Heighton as well as Boquist and then the Russian Kraftstop all going before the Oilers pick at 10.
Well, and Peter mentioned the one thing you have to realize in the first round when you're beyond the first couple picks, Jess, is that if you like your guy, you take him. And you don't gamble of trading down, which is what Arizona talked about with Heighton stepping up and taking them 5th. They didn't want to gamble and trade down. And Peter was able to play the odds. He talked about how he considered moving up in the draft, but once a few marbles fell, he was willing to play the odds and willing that he'd have the choice of 3. The one thing we didn't ask him was whether or not, if it had been Dobson or Wahlstrom, might that have affected his decision. But he wanted to take the best player on his board, and he got him with Evan Bouchard. He made that emphatically clear.
Yeah, I think the Oilers thought Bouchard was going to be gone 5 or 6, and I think they thought Dobson was going to be in the top 7 as well. So, they had a lot of viewings. They got a heavy OHL scouting bias or base with a lot of opportunity to see those guys there. Mike Chiarelli is there. Keith Gretzky's in Ontario a lot. Bob Green was in Ontario a lot. Andrew Shaw in Ontario as well. So a lot of opportunity to see Bouchard this season.
So now that we have our defensemen, how do you think round 2, round 3, round 4 is going to unfold?
Well, again, I'm going to glean from what Peter talked about in the aftermath of day 1. He talked about at pick 10, you take the best player. And then even at pick 40, you start thinking about positional need. He also alluded to the fact that a goaltender would likely not be in play at number 40, and that if he was to take a goaltender, it'd probably be 3rd round on. So just a couple of things to consider as we look forward to, Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, Stuart Skinner went last year in the 3rd round for the Oilers. Obviously had a wonderful season in Swift Current. The Oilers have got Dylan Wells and Stuart Skinner coming out of Major Junior and playing next year in Pro, possibly both in the East Coast League. So I don't know how much actual need is there for Gardien to be going in rounds maybe 4 through 7. I guess we'll wait and see. Maybe there will be a third rounder, but I think the round 2 is definitely open. I mean, some people would say take it forward, you got your D. I think it's entirely possible, given the depth of defense, which we talked about a lot yesterday, it could be another defenseman going at number 40 for the Oilers.
The other thing to keep in mind, Jess, and Bob and I have observed this over the past several drafts, if the Oilers have a player ranked around 45, 50, and he's still sitting there around 80 or 90, whether it's a goaltender or not, that's where you might see the Oilers go off the board and maybe a different pattern than what we might be anticipating. Because trust me, they have people ranked pretty deep, and if there's a guy sitting around 4th round, they'll step up and take him no matter what. Of course, 4th round is the one round they don't have a pick, but that's just something to keep in mind as we look forward to Saturday.
And as we saw right here today in round 1, anything is possible. So we'll see it all unfold tomorrow on day 2. Bob, Jack, thanks so much for joining us. And keep it locked on EdmontonOilers.com for all your draft coverage.